I'm off. Like I'm on the work.
Okay, we're live. Testing 1 2. Okay, you can hear it. Testing 1 2.
Probando. 1, 2, 3. Probando.
Testing 1 2. Okay, you can hear it. Testing 1 2.
I was like, let's go.
Ten, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
All right. We are good. We are here. New show today. Top V. I don't know. This is going to be our old pitching tips show. We're going to kick on Instagram here. We're going to be taking questions. I'm here with Robert Showtime Garcia. We'll have we got his walkout song we're going to hear today. Got some cool treats for you. If you haven't already, here's a cool little video thing. Subscribe. Hey, we're getting fancy over here, right?
I know, right?
And let me kick on Instagram where we get most of our questions. So we're going live on Instagram too. If you can't hear us, let us know. I'm gonna check to see how our mic sounds. If our mic sounds good, let's listen. Kick on Instagram where we get most of our questions. Sounds pretty good. I think we figured it out with the mics this time.
What's up, Instagram?
So I got up some of the 4D motion today. I thought we could go into that. We're really gonna have fun. We're really getting high tech here. I want to put something out right now. Got a big camp coming up in California on December 28th and 29th. This is a Christmas camp. Santa's gonna be there. No, I'm just kidding. I wish Showtime would be there. That's better than Santa. But pretty excited. We got a couple guys there. We're in San Juan Capistrano. So if you're out in California and you want to attend a Top Velocity camp, get into all the Top Velocity programming, go through the Top Velocity evals, work with me personally, and not have to make the trip down here, even though we wish you'd make the trip down here. But still, whenever you sign up for a camp, pitcher, position player, you can come down here and train anytime. It's a full membership here, just like Robert's been enjoying in his time and his comeback training here. So let's talk about that a little bit. What's your experience been here for the past, 2 weeks? Almost 2 weeks?
Yeah, almost 2 weeks.
So, tell us about your experience.
I mean, it has been amazing. Just like all the information and knowledge I got through the camp, the books, and
Almost 2 weeks.
almost 2 weeks. You know, it has
So-
helping me a lot to figure out like where are my weaknesses and my strengths and what do I need to improve to take my
Yeah, I've
pitching
seen
to the next
huge
level.
improvements. I think your biggest improvements have been your, not only the health, having a little banged up knee, but your health of your knee. but it's been your mobility looks like it's really improved. Your med ball throws have really improved. Am I right?
Yeah, like I'm improving in every single aspect.
Well, and tell them what the goal is. I mean, we want to be 90 plus again, right? That's what we're going for.
We're shooting for the stars, you know, so and goal should
Am
be
I right?
100, yeah.
I just realized now what the goal is. I mean, we want to be 90. All right, I got to kill this background thing. I'm still getting good at my audio here. I think this is the problem. Knocking this out real quick. I'm still playing with my audio, guys, until I get this thing perfect and I understand how this thing works. Oh, somebody's calling, messing up our stream there.
There you go.
That's what it was. It's picking up the atmosphere audio, and then it was picking up our audio. So hopefully I fixed that issue. Let's see. All right, I think we did. We get it. It's got my breathing in there. All right, so if you have any questions for us today, you can go on YouTube, you can go on Instagram. You want to start going through there? You see any questions pop up?
En Instagram también puedo responder todas las preguntas que tengan en español para los que no hablan inglés. Vamos a ver. Let's see some questions.
Any questions on there or no? Where's my dang chat? How does it not give you chat over here?
I mean, there's a question that is like, if you bench 135, how fast should you be throwing a baseball?
If you bench 135,
I mean,
well,
that's not a lot of weight.
not a lot of weight, but look, here's the thing with lifting. I think a lot of people get confused. Lifting is developing or hypertrophying what strength that you currently have or what athleticism you currently have. So if you are a pretty talented guy and you have good genetics and you have really good athleticism, you know, you don't even probably need weights. But if you did use weights, it would take where you are and would build you on top of that. So I think a lot of people, they're like, well, that guy's benching, you know, barely his body weight, so bench must not work. Well, that guy genetically already has either really mobile upper body, a really quick upper body, a really strong upper body. So he hasn't spent a lot of time there benching because he didn't have to.
Right.
I'm sure if you spend him a lot of time there, eventually you get pretty impressive, but he doesn't need that. Now, if you're a guy who has a weak upper body and you're not that mobile, then you need to do that. Then you're going to have to lift. Yeah, I got him. Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing. Like, it's not a lot, but you probably find a lot of 90-mile-an-hour guys that don't bench a lot. But the ones that don't have a lot of strength that are benching a lot, it'll potentially help them.
Yeah, it's like me in professional baseball. I see a lot of guys that doesn't work out and they throw really hard, you know, but it's like just something natural from them. You know?
They already physically have a lot of those abilities to obviously throw hard. And
but that doesn't mean that you don't need to work out or,
right.
You know.
That would be the kind of layman's.
It's like I say,
way
you gotta
to
find who you are and define who you are and, you know, go from there.
Yeah, I think we sound good now. So, any other questions on there?
Let me see. Let me take.
We're also
over
on
Instagram.
Periscope, even though I can't see Periscope. So, I won't be able to see what questions are coming through there.
La gente que nos ve en Instagram, que nos quiera preguntar lo que sea en español, en inglés.
No questions on there? Not yet?
Not yet.
All right. So we could go over some 3D here. Looking at, this is what we do when you come into a camp. We put you in the 4D motion sensors. So this is what they look like. They're these Bluetooth sensors. They light up different colors, kind of like the Infinity Stones from the, what's that from? One of the Marvel comics. I forgot the name of it. But I use 12. You can use 2, you can use as much as you want, and we place them on the body, and it's really cool. I think the best thing about 4D motion is that you can put it anywhere in the body. It doesn't have to be like specific. You can place it in many different places, and then there's all these presets, and you could capture, say, just the arm. You could capture just the hips, like just see the hips going, the foot. So this, I'm obviously doing 12. We can see the whole thing. And then it's really cool once you get it in. Not only do you get it like, you know, playing in 3D, like we see here, and then you can spin it all around, you know, and see you at different points and stop and see where everything is lining up. You can then come in and use like some guides and tools to really understand this. So like for here, this is a hip line and shoulder line. And if I go to the top here and I look right from the top, you can see there's some, you know, not much separation here. So ideally, this is a great little way to say, hey, how well am I separating at front foot strike? So I'd say this is front foot strike for him. You can see he brings his arm really far back, but not much hip to shoulder separation. So I would be concerned because of the lack of hip to shoulder separation and this arm being so far back, is this arm going to be dragging in rotation? And this guy has had issues with that. You know, it is an issue, but it's gotten better. And the key is just getting that hip through a little bit more to increase that range. And then this arm doesn't feel like it has to drag to delay so much. So if y'all have any questions on 4D motion, let me know, but I'll keep walking through it. Not as many questions today. What's getting to the holidays, probably everybody's zoning out, just focusing on getting away from everything for a little bit. I'm actually close to a holiday myself, so. Also, with this, we can do graphs. Some of the coolest graphs we have here are the kinematic sequencing. So we can see how things are timing in the body. And people wonder, why is that important? It's because sequencing is how we convert energy. So a better athlete is going to sequence energy better. So that's going to show us how to do that, and I'll go into some of those specific things when it comes to sequencing. I'm going to have to kill some of this video here. It's slowing me down. So we'll go over the sequencing. So if we look here, we see all these lines going off. The red line is going to be your hips. The blue or the green line is going to be your trunk, and then the blue line is going to be your glove arm, and the yellow line is your arm. And when we sequence and we use the kinetic chain efficiently, we want to see, and this is when these say the hips are rotating, because it's looking at angular velocity, how quickly it rotated. So the higher it goes, the faster it's rotating. So we can see that the peak of rotation for the hips was right here. And if we look right on top of that, the peak of the trunk rotation was right there. So the sequencing is in sync. And if we look from the top here, we can see that those guides, the hip line and shoulder line, are pretty much in sync as well. So sometimes you can have your sequencing stacked or in sync, and your guides will actually be slightly off. What this is saying is the speeds are peaking together, and then what the guides are saying is the positions are also sticking together. So this is basically not separating. If we separate hips and shoulders, then we'd see the hips peaking, and then later in time, because this is just time through the delivery, later in time we'd see the trunk peaking, right? So that's what we're trying to get with athletes, is we're trying to get more time between when the hip speeds peak to when the trunk peaks. Because when we do that, studies show that reduces stress on the arm, and that potentially allows you to accelerate your trunk speeds higher. So you can see the hip speeds are going off somewhere around 800 degrees per second, and the trunk speeds are going off somewhere around 1200, okay, which isn't too bad. I mean, he's quick. This is a quick guy. But if we were able to pull them apart, those chest speeds might go to 1600, you know, and then that energy keeps going up as well. So the sequencing is really key. It's really key for developing an elite pitcher. Typically, I'd say 99% of the amateurs and even some of the pros that come through here really struggle here with sequencing. So this is a really huge piece for becoming an elite pitcher, and this is something that we really focus on in the 3X Pitching Velocity program, even in the position player stuff. When we're training these guys, is trying to get them to sequence this as best we can. Man, this is weird. No questions at all today. If y'all got any questions, we're here to take some questions. Normally we were bombarded with questions. We must have
I
answered
know.
them all last time. You got any questions on this?
Well, I think like for us as baseball players, it's pretty cool, to have all this analysis, because that's something like you don't get feedback, with your pitching coach, like he's like probably you, like, oh yeah, you're open or flying too early, but there's like a reason why you're doing that, and once you have this
right.
analysis, you can know exactly what's going on your body.
Yeah, so seeing it's just so powerful when you get to see it, as opposed to someone just kind of telling you, oh, you're flying open, because they're really just telling you that this arm is doing something, and you don't really understand how that's affecting the whole system, because if you did, then you'd know how to fix the arm. You'd go, oh, if I'm pulling with my arm, it means something else isn't creating rotational power, because everything's stacked together. So where do I go now? Once I learn that, now can I get the hips to drive harder? Then I probably won't pull the glove harder, and then my coach won't tell me I'm flying open.
And that's the
Right.
main thing, and I probably will say when I was young, and most young baseball players, especially pitchers, get confused, when you're throwing a bullpen or in the game, and the coach is like, yeah, you're flying up, and yeah, but tell me how to fix that. And like I find out, like the problem might be the legs, because you ain't driving hard enough, so like watching all this analysis and all this information like give you a clearly idea of what you need to work on.
You got some Spanish
how to
questions right
solve
there?
the problems.
We got one question in Spanish.
Dice, ¿dónde puedo conseguir los balones de 2 libras? Where can he found the 2-pound med ball?
So Amazon, and I'm sure Amazon ships them wherever he is. Where is
Yeah,
he?
sí, los puedes encontrar por Amazon y en internet, y ellos son envíos internacionales. Si tienes más preguntas en español, aquí las respondemos.
Another one of my favorite graphs too is when you bring in linear sequencing. So we're looking at two graphs here. So you got angular sequencing, linear sequencing. So angular sequencing is how your hips rotated, how your trunk rotated, how your arm rotated. Linear sequencing is how your hip pushed forward, how your trunk pushed forward, and then how your arm eventually pushed forward. So, and we're already losing connection on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, check it on YouTube right now. So we can see the difference. And sometimes what you'll see is a guy rotates really well, but he doesn't move forward really well, meaning he doesn't push his trunk out really well. So if we go here, remember we saw in the angular sequencing, everything was stacked on top of each other, so his hips and trunk just peaked together. When we look here in linear sequencing, we can see that the trunk peaked before the hips peaked, and then you can also see how little energy was going through the hip compared to the trunk. So it just shows that even though there was some decent rotational energy on that hip, there wasn't a lot of linear push or drive through that hip. Might have to restart that guy.
All right.
And we're restarting Instagram because it's struggling. Let's see if we can get it to kick up again. So what you're seeing here is this guy had rotating together, and there wasn't a lot of linear drive through the hip, which tells me the force behind the hip that would have really pulled it apart in the positions to see the two lines, the hip and trunk line apart, that would have probably come more from the linear drive than just the rotational power. And then also too, there's no separation here as well. So the moment the hips push forward, the trunk was also pushing forward. So it's like everything's going together, and then he's putting the arm behind his head to try to create the delay and transfer the energy better. So you know what, when we start working with them, we might sit here and try to get the rotational sequencing to start separating. And then we want to make sure we can see the linear sequencing start to separate as well. And also, you can see the glove side, which is that blue line, is pulling first over here. It's also pulling first over here. So there's a lot of that glove side here, you know, flying open. He's going to probably get a lot of criticism from coaches that he's flying open because it's showing it right there. But what's the key to not flying open? It's to get that hip power. And then this glove side is not going to try to create the energy because the glove side's going first. So if you got the hip to go first with more power, the glove side is not going to get in there and disrupt that. It's more than likely going to chill out and start moving with the trunk. As the trunk goes forward, the glove's going to tuck with it.
Yeah, one of the things is you need to learn your body and understand your body. That's a thing I learned when I got here, because I was like, well, why I cannot get on those elite positions? I thought when I was here, like, it can be like, it gotta be a mechanic issue, but I realized no, it was like a strength issue, mobility issue, that my body wasn't allowing me to get to those elite positions, you know?
So what did you notice happened as your mobility improved, your strength improved? Did it get easier to get into those positions in the throws?
Yeah, it's like a sculpting, how you say?
Sculptor,
A
yeah.
sculptor, your
You gotta
body, you
scope,
know?
yeah.
Like, you gotta make your body work or move the way you want them to move.
Right.
You know?
You're right. It's a good point. It's like bodybuilders look at themselves in the mirror and they go, hey, I want my upper body
Right.
bigger. So then they do the exercises that would isolate that. It's the same thing when you're like, man, I don't have any hip to shoulder or no thoracic rotation.
Right.
So I'm going to do exercises that improve this. And then you're like, oh, there you go.
Mhm.
And then when you go into the drills and the mechanics, then it's easier to implement that and then teach your brain those new movements or those
Right.
better movements.
And the cool thing about this program is, like, you actually become your own coach, and since you are warming up, since you are doing plyo, since you are doing lifting, everything, you're thinking and relating everything with pitching, you know, like all the exercises are connected. It's not like you just going
Just
to lift to get strong
or to look good
yeah, like, no, actually, like, everything
is getting
has
to
a
the goal.
relation.
Right, because
Yeah.
it's trying to manipulate this, right?
And that's what I think make this program special, you know.
Yeah, and then the fact that, I mean, I think the hard thing is what you've spent a couple years just learning it. So you can get to this point where when you do the training, you know how to put it all together, right?
But at the same time, in all these years in my career, I was some points frustrated because I didn't know the answer or how to solve the problems, you know.
Mhm.
Now that I understand more about my body, about the biomechanic, the pitching mechanics, all that, now I can, like, think and, you know, find an answer for those
Yeah, you
problems.
don't
know?
get to those places where you're like, I don't know what to do. You
Yeah.
always feel like you have something you can do to fix your problem.
Right. Now I you know, with all this technology and everything we learn here, you know, you become your own coach, you know.
More Spanish. This is going to be the Spanish episode. I like it.
Dice, ¿cuáles pueden ser los ejercicios más eficientes para calentar y estirar antes de una práctica o un juego? She's saying, like, which are the exercise more efficient to warm up or to get ready for a practice or a game? Bueno, en el programa nosotros de Top Velocity tenemos estiramientos estáticos y estiramientos de playos. Entonces tenemos una rutina para juego, para calentamiento, para antes de levantar pesas. Entonces uno de los ejercicios, hay estudios que no es muy bueno estirarse de más porque eso reduce el rendimiento de tus músculos. I'm just saying, like, it's not really good to stretch too much because that reduces your performance, you know. You just gotta find, like, a sweet spot. Tú tienes que encontrar como un punto medio entre no estirarte demasiado, pero lo suficiente para poder calentar.
Good stuff.
Yep.
Any other questions? What's another one? Must be just all your people coming over. Oh, here. If you're in 14U and you throw 71, is that good? 14U 71. Yeah, I mean, I think that's good. Like I always say, I'm not worried about velocity at a young age.
Right.
I mean, obviously, when you get into high school, which you're probably right there, to make the varsity, velocity is going to be becoming a big factor. So you're close to having to really be concerned about your velocity. So what's a better advice for you is that you start putting things in place so in the next year or so you can start training for velocity. So you need to build an understanding of biomechanics. You need to build an understanding of good strength and conditioning to build your athleticism, a good understanding of get a good schedule of off-season, preseason, in-season going, where you're not just going from one season to the other season. You're actually taking time off to develop all this. So right now you got to kind of lay the ground. You got to lay the foundation for you to really have a great career, because it's going to start speeding up and competition's going to start jumping really fast. And I'm sure you're probably already feeling that. You just don't need to be worried about your velocity. You need to be more worried about, am I putting myself in the best position to reach my true potential in my career? Because velocity is just a representation of where you are. You could be the same person over the next 3 years and it never change. Just because your velocity is at a certain point at this point in your life doesn't mean it's going to be at this point in your life. Great example. How hard did you throw at 16 years old?
That's what we discussed before. Like when I was 16 years old, I used to play shortstop. I used to be an athlete. I used to hit really good, and I was throwing like 90s. So I was like a big prospect in Mexico when I was 16. So the Yankee scout made me become a pitcher. So I stopped playing position player, and I start losing my athleticism. So I think for you guys that are young, like, you just gotta be focused on being the best athlete you can be right now,
And start training for that. Like start learning to lift, start learning to all the speed and agility movements that you need to get good at. Start learning how to mobilize, and like I said, biomechanics. Start understanding how the body needs to move and sequence and stuff like that. Now's the time to really start one step learning this stuff and then slowly implementing it. So when you're 16 or 17 and you go to that showcase, that first big showcase, and you don't do well, you don't go, oh crap, now I got to do all this work and I got about 6 months or 3 months because I want to be like my buddies and get a verbal commitment to a D1, or I want to get drafted. So don't wait that long, which is unfortunately what everybody does. Really start to lay the foundation now. I'll tell a 12-year-old that. The problem is when you get really young, when you get to a 10-year-old, they don't really know if this is what they're going to want to do. They're not at an age where it's like, this is what I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing. So it's hard with a 10-year-old, strictly in the fact of you don't know that this is what they want. And if you're not sure this is what you want or this is what you love, then it's going to be hard to commit to it. So, it's that's key is really just making sure that if this is something you're passionate about, you start laying it out. And the earlier the better, and that's going to really set you up.
Yeah, and becoming an athlete is like huge and important for scouts when you are young, because they're not like looking for you on your performance that day. They are looking like the projection, like on 2-3 years old. So if you show some athleticism, they are like, oh, this guy is going to be a beast on 2-3 years. They are not looking if you strike out or how many guys you struck out.
Yeah.
They're looking like the athleticism and the projection you have, like how.
Yeah, because scouts
Yeah.
get excited when they see a 16-year-old throwing 90, because they're probably just like they get excited when they see a 16-year-old running a 6.5 60. They think, wow, this is going to be a superior athlete maybe in the next couple of years. And there's still they're rolling the dice on that because they don't know.
They don't know.
And many times they lose and they get burned. Many times they gamble on that kid, and in 2 years he's throwing slower or running slower, and now they
Yeah,
wasted.
because like I was watching this video of Kobe, like those guys like stick with their talent or stick with their skills. They don't get that commitment of working hard,
Yep.
And I think that's mainly what happened. And for you guys that are really young, I think you're in a pretty good advantage of like looking all these programs and having all this information, like I wish I have all this
Yeah,
information
no,
when I was 14, 15 years old.
me too. So if you have any questions, you can chime in. We're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. Man, it's just dead time right now. There's not a lot of people out there. I didn't even look on YouTube. Let me see if YouTube's got any questions. Just my internet is. I'm not going to go into it. It's going to take a day. I wish I could pull up it another way. So let's go back into this. Let's look at some other really cool tools here. So I can look at like trunk orientation here. So let's say at maximum external rotation, when the arm lays back, we can see his trunk was 16 degrees to the glove side. So his trunk is 16 degrees this way, which says down here 16. Okay, that means that's good, and we call that contralateral tilt, tilting to the glove side. Studies show when you tilt up to about 25 degrees, it improves velocity. But when you go past 25 degrees, your velocity won't go up, but the torques will keep going up on your arm because you're getting very rotational. I mean, if you look at a lot of the studies, most of the studies show the more rotational you get, the more forces go up on your arm. Think about it. The more I'm spinning, my arm is flying out, right? We hear that, the fly out, right? So the more I spin, the more that arm wants to fly out. When my arm flies out, it has way more stress. The stress is being pulled out, the arm being pulled out of socket, and ultimately the arm, all the joints here that are trying to hold themselves together have maximum stress on it. When I'm not flying in rotation and I've got some linear movement, the arm wants to kind of relax more because you don't have all that centrifugal force on it, right? So when you're moving forward, that arm wants to kind of relax, lay back, and then it stays more fluided. Those are the guys that throw without so much rotation in their trunk. Those guys that just move at you, lay back, and then release, and it looks so effortless, and the ball pops and jumps. It's because it's a crisper throw. It's like taking a relaxed, slingshot and then pulling it back. A nice little pop and release, as opposed to something really rigid and already tight, and you're trying to get more force out of it, which is kind of what's happening when you're rotating really hard and your arm's flying out away from your body. So, like with this tool, you can also do with a camera, is you would say draw a line right down the middle of your body, or from perpendicular to the ground, and you want to measure how far, say, that hip was shifted over to the middle of the chest, to your glove side. When the arm is laid back, you don't want to be past 25. If you're past 25, you're going to be in that really rotational trunk, and all that force is pulling your arm out of socket, which that's going to be hard on you. Plus, like we said, I mean, it supports your velocity because you're letting your arm, you're giving your arm room to release. But the problem is, like I said, if it's past 25, and it's you probably just aggressively flying off, and your arm is flying away from your body. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a question for you. Like, how did it change the way you coach, having like slow motion and all this information for you? Like, how did your game change to improve, like, and help other like young pitchers?
Well, I mean, I was like you. I was doing this first for myself. So first to understand what I was doing by studying other pitchers.
Right.
So I know initially I wasn't using a lot of my video because I didn't have someone out there shooting it, and back then cameras weren't on everybody's phone like they are today.
Yeah, I mean, when you were 18, there wasn't slow
No.
motion or all these videos, right?
Yeah, it was slow motion was there, but it was really expensive. But the one thing you could get is you could get, you know, videotape a El Duque, videotape a Nolan Ryan, and you could still in the videotape slow it down. And then of course when it went into computers, you could slow it down. So I was really slowing them down, and then it just things started changing. I think it's like you can never turn back. It's like you've seen under the hood, you've seen behind the curtain. Now you know how all this is working, and then yeah, it changes everything. You literally, I think that's why when I looked at myself before I injured myself, and then looked at myself when I was playing indie ball after I made it back and rebuilt everything, it doesn't even look like the same picture. I think the moment I started slowing it down is the moment everything started changing, because you're just a representation of the body that God gave you and how your brain is thinking every day. So when your brain starts thinking differently, it's not your DNA changes, it's just you start changing what you can about your body and about how you do things. And then over it's like slow incremental things, but over a 4 or 5 year period, which what it took for me post rotator cuff surgery to get back, you look back and you can't even recognize who you were, and it just blows your mind. And the point is, I think the video slowing it down is what allowed me to see it differently, and then train it differently, do everything differently, because I could understand it through the video in slow
Right.
motion.
So you try to imitate like Nolan Ryan and El
Yeah.
Duque, like by just analyzing their videos
Yeah, and slowing it down.
and slowing
But I
down.
mean, not from like the same way I do